we have two stoves here today, and these are really fascinating little stoves. This one here is brand new. This one here I have had since I was 18 and I'm now 67, so you can work that out. These stoves both currently do work. I mean, obviously the new one works. The old one can work when I swapped the cap from this to that one so that it could work because it was leaking pressure through the cap. Now, the fuel cap. Now, I will take out the packaging to give us a bit more room here. And right, so how much has changed in half a century? In fact, nothing much. Nothing much has changed since 1955 when these came out. Originally, this came out as the 123 Svea. It's now the Svea123R, which is the current model. The Svea123 was actually made in Sweden. This one, the Svea123R, is made in Taiwan. But it's in no way at all inferior. In fact, this one is heavier than the original 123 because it has a pricker needle in it. So when you turn it fully clockwise, a needle goes through the orifice, up through the orifice to unblock it. And it's extremely easy and useful. Though these actually block very rarely. Both these stoves, even though one is clean and one is dirty at the moment, they're both very similar. The burners are pretty much exactly the same. This one also comes with a little pump, a little mini pump, and this is a two-way valve on here, which means air can go in as well as there's a pressure relief valve going the other way, hence the term two-way. This has a one-way valve, which means you can't use a pump on it, though this is purely self-pressurizing. A one-way valve does work on this as well, and when that's used, you can't pressurize it using the pump. You have to pressurize it either by applying some sort of external heat, right? And you can, with these stoves, if you wish, you can just prime them using fuel from the stove, which is one option. In fact, I'll take this one out of the picture altogether now, because really we're talking about this stove now, and this is the subject to the review today. Now, yes, what you can do if you want to light this, if you want to light it from using just fuel from the stove itself, the first thing you have to do, this just comes off, it just attaches via a lug on the body, and you just rotate it to lock it, or rotate it clockwise to lock it, or anti-clockwise to unlock it. First thing you do if you want to prime this one using, or get fuel from the stove, you loosen the cap and then you tighten it again. You do that to release any residual vacuum that might be in the tank. Then you would cup your hands around it like this for a few minutes and warm it. Some people would also use a lighter at the bottom of it, which is perfectly safe to encourage fuel to come out. When the fuel dribbles into here, you can then use that to prime the stove, which involves burning the fuel until this is warm enough to vaporize the fuel, and also encourage the tank's warmed up enough to encourage even a small flow of fuel, which then feeds the flame, which then continues to warm the stove. And often takes like a minute or two after lighting to really come up 100%. If you look on here, you'll see Svea, the name of it, 123, not 123R, and Sweden. Okay, and then petrol or gasoline in 4 different languages there. This is all made out of brass, including, importantly, the burner cap. So why is the burner cap important? The burner cap is really important because it is made out of brass, and also this unscrews. That means easy access to the orifice, but it also means that you'd never have to disturb this cap. On most stoves, if you want access to that jet, you have to pry this off, which deforms the cap and reduces the life of them. Most of the caps, these burner caps, or what they call them, flame spreaders, they are made out of steel, and they corrode. They also deform under repeated heating cycles, which is useless. The one on this stove here, the 8R, which I'll bring back in, is exactly the same, right, as the one on this stove. And well, I say exactly the same. That's not quite true, but it's made out of brass, and it's actually a bit heavier duty, I suppose, than this one. It's got thicker arms on it, but that hasn't been changed. I can vouch for the fact that it hasn't been changed or serviced in 48 years, all right? That stove has not had anything done to it in nearly half a century, and the only fault was the fuel cap, which leaks. And as soon as I put this one on, although I couldn't pressurize it because it's a one-way valve, it worked fine in other respects. So these are just the most simple things you can imagine, and in my opinion, though they don't produce quite as much power as a separate remote canister stove, they actually can get very close if you put a two-way valve on it and pressurize them. Because the key to these stoves working is, a really good supply of fuel. And if you pump them up, you will get these things will really roar, right? They just like a MSR Dragonfly or an Optimus Nova or the Primus Omnilight or OmniFuel. They're probably similar in power really once they get up. There are power ratings for this. I think this is about 4,000 BTU, but I would take those BTU ratings with a pinch of salt because it's so variable depending on the fuel level and everything. Now, when you fuel these up, you should roughly fuel them up to about there, which is ideal. You don't want to really fill them up. Overfilling these stoves means there's less air in here for vapor to fill and compress the fuel and drive it out, which means they tend not to run as well. One guide that you can use is if you undo this and tip it to about 45 degrees, that should just about result in a small amount of fuel tipping out. And that means you've got it just about right, okay? If obviously you've got it to 60, so 30 degrees from the vertical, and it's spilling fuel, it's probably got a bit too much in it. You're not supposed to run them dry either, though I honestly don't think that's much of a problem. When you open this up, you can see the white wick spreading out along the bottom. I had a look at the wick in my Optimus 8R there, and honestly, the wick is still perfect and the tank is still in perfect shape. There's no corrosion. This is a great thing, with this brass. It might sort of oxidize on the surface, but it is just, phenomenally resilient. It's also highly conductive as well, which makes the whole process of using one of these a lot easier. So my opinion is that these are still a relevant stove even now. And unlike a canister stove, you're not going to get partly used, environmentally unfriendly canisters. I do use canister stoves, but you've got to deal with the unused canisters. One of the problems with canister fuel is that when they start to empty, or as they start to empty, the next time you go on a trip, especially if you don't have a lot of room, you might just go and grab a full canister, which means you tend to accumulate partly filled canisters, which is, not great for the environment, really. I mean, in my opinion, it is quite wasteful. But hey, look, there's no perfect environmentally free anything, I don't think, I don't think there is such a thing. Even with these, you still got a fuel bottle, you still got to buy shellite. These run on shellite, which you get from Bunnings. You can run them on gasoline, unleaded. They will run okay on that, but there's a lot more maintenance because there's additives in there. it's a bit more volatile, and it will gum up the stove a bit more. Shellite you could leave in here for 20 years and come back and it just like it was yesterday. Okay, so these stoves, you know, the energy for them is extremely easy to meter out. You can just have the fuel that's in the stove if you go for an overnight trip, which should be plenty. If you need more fuel, you can put it into a proper fuel bottle. I would use one of my MSR fuel bottles. You can carry 300 mils or 700 mils depending on the size you use. But these really are absolutely bulletproof. They're almost, the chances of this failing during a trip are bloody 1 in a million, you know. I mean, obviously, as it gets a lot older, some of the seals could leak, which could make it a little bit tricky to maintain the flame if it's leaking on the cap. But I mean, it seems to take 30 or 40 years of use before that happens. So this is brand new. It also comes with a little cup on top, which I haven't shown, with a little handle on it. I'm not sure whether that's how useful that is. I mean, I think that's one of the naff little things that they do with this stove that are probably not so good. You might have, oh no, I didn't show it on here. Just wondering, no, I didn't show it on the box. Okay, so, and these fold in, these things fold in when you're transporting it. And like I say, there's a very small aluminium cup with this little handle on it, which, you know, it's really not that useful because it's just too small. It's too small to use as a mug. It's too small to cook anything in. It's too small to boil enough water for a meal. So, I mean, it might be just. So most people would pack this with a decent pot as well, or even fit this into a pot, rather than just resting the little cup they provide on the top of this. Now, I will go on to show this running during the day. I think I've got some video, and also running at night. These things are really beautiful, especially when they run at night. The flame they produce are just a solid, quite interesting sort of blue color, which I find, you know, really good. Now, okay, all right then, I think that's it. And I'll come back with some more videos a bit later. I might repeat some of the stuff that I've said. This is probably not a professional. I'm going to show you than you do in the daytime. So we've got it turned off. Going to just have a quick look at that chain. It seems to be, yeah, that's okay. Open that, let the pressure out, turn it back on, tighten it back up rather, secure this again, put this in here. Go and light this with my little thing on. Now, you may see a bit more here if I turn this off. I don't know how good this will come out on the video. We'll find out. So the idea here is this is just going to be a real-time demonstration. I'll just take it up to the point where it runs well, okay? And we'll see. Though, like I say, this stove is self-pressurizing, I suppose you would call it. So the heat from the priming will increase the temperature of the contents of the tank, and that will allow, and my dog is getting his dinner, so I'll have to redo this video because he won't stop barking. Never mind. Okay. Hey, Ringo. Okay, so you can see it's looking pretty good, really. That's not bad. If I put the pot on top, it will maybe make it heat up a little bit quicker. But I think the heat mainly conducts back through the base of the stove and the assembly where it feeds the fuel. And the fuel is fed by a wick. If I put this on, it may speed it up a little bit. I don't know how much you can see with the stove on, with the pot on. I'll have to have a look and just see. what you can actually see. Oh yeah, you get a good view of the flame under there. You can hear it still struggling a little bit, which is normal, right? Because it takes a while for this to heat up. Like I'm feeling this, and it is starting to warm up, definitely. So when it goes to a nice even splutter, we'll call that lit. The temperature at the moment, according to my watch, is 18 degrees. So it's cooled down a bit from this afternoon. If this was really cold, I think it would take a bit of extra priming, maybe a second lot of alcohol. And as I say, you can also prime with fuel from the stove, either by warming it slightly by whatever means, your hands or a lighter, or even putting the stove in the sun, and then that having enough pressure to force at least some fuel out, enough to light it. Or you can get a straw and manually withdraw it. Because it only takes a relatively small amount of fuel to do to prime it. Alcohol, though, is extremely clean, and I rather like using alcohol for priming. I think it just does work really well, and I rather like it for that reason. Just simple, So we're almost there. I'll take that off again. It's starting to come up. The bell is starting to glow. That's close to 100%. Yeah, unfortunately Ringo's barking, and that's the Chihuahua bit of him, I think. And he does that for Glennis, my wife, when he's making dinner, and he'll bark and bark and bark, whereas if I tell him to be quiet, he generally will. But I think he's finally got his dinner. Alright, so now I'd say it's well and truly done. The only downside with a stove, and it's a minor thing, I mean, you only get a stove like this if you enjoy stoves, right? If you don't enjoy stoves and playing with them, then don't bother. Just get a simple canister one. Yes, they're wasteful environmentally, yes, they're boring, but they do a great job and they're easy. This one you have to nurse a little bit. Well, I say nurse, I mean, what's going to happen? If you had a pan of food or a pot of food, you would have to monitor it and make sure that as the stove heats up that you don't overcook it, because it would increase the rate of the burn. So, right, so let's see how we go. That looks fine. I might leave it there. I mean, the water, it is heating up quite rapidly. Probably another couple of minutes and this will boil, and I do want to have something to drink, but I will show you. I'll show you just turning it off anyway, or turning it down to a simmer. Alright, this actually simmers really well. I mean, that to me is a very low flame. Like, that would be enough. That would probably be too low to do pancakes or most things. I mean, that would be... Oh, actually, you notice what I haven't done either. I haven't turned these pot supports the right way in, so I might just do that now. Those pot supports turn in for when you want to transport it, obviously. It's always a good idea to have them facing out when in use for obvious reasons. It's stability. Ouch. Quite hot. Okay, so they're out now. That's my Leatherman tool, whatever it's called. What is it? Leatherman Wave. Excellent tool. I carry that with me all the time, and they work fabulously well. Probably should do a little review on that. It's one of the gadgets, many gadgets I like. Okay, so you can see it's holding that simmer really well. I could turn this down to like a candlelight one. I know people demonstrate, to me, that's as low as it should go, because when it goes yellow, that's a dirty, inefficient flame, right? I don't like to see that. So at some point, it just doesn't have enough velocity of flow of gas to combust fully, whereas like that's the lowest point, in my opinion, where the stove is fully efficient, not producing carbon monoxide, and generally doing its job. All right, now that's full. Now, if I turn this all the way around to the needle clearing, it will suddenly shut off unless I'm really quick. Let's see how quick I am, or else I'm going to have to relight this. Oh, I wasn't quick enough. Okay. Yeah, the needle clearing thing, it works actually really, really well. And because it's a wick, it's not prone to blocking like a remote canister stove would, where you'd have a bottle that you pump up, and then there's a hose that goes into this part of the burner, the actual burner. And those can block more. They have to have filters in them that you have to change periodically. Not very often, but if they get any dirt at all in them, it travels through the tube and gets caught in the very, very fine orifice, which all of these have. This one uses a wick, and it just seems to me it actually gives it another level of protection or reliability, because even if they do get a bit of crud in them, it's so easy to clear them, and it doesn't rely on flow. That wick is always going to suck up liquid and supply it to the burner regardless of any minute particles that might be floating around. And also you can obviously, clear it very quickly. So this isn't a bad sort of like demonstration really for the stove. In fact, I might just take this off here and just move this around a bit so you can sort of get a better look at it. It really is a beautiful thing to behold, in my opinion. I mean, it's very nice. You can go right in there. And you can see it's quite an effective windscreen around here as well, which is good. You should not leave the key in there all the time, because obviously it does get hot, but it's not actually that hot at the moment. So there you go. I think that's a reasonable sort of demo for the stove. I've taken this with the iPhone, and this is a DJI Osmo 3 camera, which has got a built-in gimbal. So I'm using that at the moment for this. It actually comes out quite well. This is almost totally dark outside with the backlight coming from inside the house. So I will go and have myself a coffee, and we'll continue this some other time.